Hey Hawks, this is Father Kevin Gillespie, and you're listening to Sports and Rants with Brett and Pants. The Hawk will never die.
And we are back now live with former Pittsburgh Steeler, Detroit Lion, Charlie Batch. Charlie, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Oh, we're doing great. It's great having you on with us today.
Hey, not a problem. Thanks for having me.
So, first let's talk NFL playoffs. Have you been watching them?
Yeah, I've been watching a little bit. I haven't paid too much attention since the Steelers got knocked out. But I'll try to help you out as much as possible.
So, just quick opinion, who do you think will be in the Super Bowl?
I honestly like Seattle, and I think New England will come out.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be bad. But it wouldn't be bad to see Indianapolis. I mean, I really like Andrew Luck.
I mean, you saw a lot of Tom Brady during your career with the Steelers, so you must think highly of him and their quarterback style and their play style over there in New England.
Oh yeah, Tom Brady he's always given us headaches, and especially for a very long time. And one of those things we knew we either had to get past Baltimore or New England at some point in the AFC playoffs, and you can see Tom Brady still going at it because he has his guys ready to take that next step to the Super Bowl.
You made 3 Super Bowl appearances and won 2 Super Bowl championships. What does a team have to have in order to make that final game count?
I think you have to have a little bit of luck and being hot at the right time. And whenever we had both of our Super Bowl wins, we were hot right at the right time. And so 2005, we had to win our last 4 games just to get into the playoffs, and then at that point win the next 4 games. And we were one of the first teams to ever win, a wild card team to win all games on the road. And in 2008, we were that number 1 seed heading into the playoffs, and you can see we were able to take advantage of that. And unfortunately, we weren't playing our best ball at the end when we ended up going to Super Bowl 45 and losing to the Packers, and that was just unfortunate. So when I say, all of those combinations, number one, you have to have a little luck, you have to be playing your best ball, and obviously you have to be injury-free when you make that run.
So when you went to the Super Bowl, you actually had 2 different coaches. You had Bill Cowher and Mike Tomlin. What's the difference between coaching styles, and is it a certain type of coach that has to get you to that point?
Well, I mean, it is coaching, but players ultimately play. They're the ones that have to go out there and make the plays. But when you look at where Coach Cowher was, here he was in his 14th year, and he was a seasoned veteran coach, where Tomlin was only in his 2nd year. So he was trying to get his guy, trying to figure out what that niche was. But both of them, obviously, they're very good communicators, and they want to play defense, and they play it very well. And both of those teams that we won, we had 2 solid defenses to be able to help us make that run. So, it wasn't fair to really compare those 2 just because they were so young, but you can kind of see where Coach Tomlin was at. He's starting to kind of put himself in that Coach Cowher category.
So what have you been doing now that you're a few years out of the league in retirement? What have you been doing?
Actually, it's a number of different things. Number one is we're still working with my foundation, which is called Best of the Batch Foundation, and we are an educational foundation which uses sports to draw kids in. And then at that point, we're able to implement any educational component that we choose. And we've now finished our 14th year, and we service over 3,100 kids annually with 13 different programs. So that keeps me busy for 11 months out of the year. We always took off in January when I was playing just because we anticipated a Super Bowl run, and hopefully we didn't finish our season in February. So that kind of we kind of kept that approach now that I'm out the game. But in addition to my foundation, I work with the NFLPA with the Trust Program, which helps players transition away from the game, and that was a program that was created from the last collective bargaining agreement that we were able to pull away from the owners and help players transition away from the game in whatever capacity that looks like, whether that's brain and body, whether that's lifestyle, whatever that looks like for that particular player. Some players just want to go back to school. So if that's what they want to do, we help prepare players with their proper plan to be able to transition away from the game.
So is it a counseling type of foundation?
Well, not foundation. We're an educational foundation. So what we do, it wouldn't necessarily, there is some, I would say counseling, but there's mentoring that takes place as well.
The good or the benefits of the foundation definitely speaks for itself. How did it start for you?
Actually, for me, it was something that started back in 1996, and it was because I lost my sister to senseless gang violence. And at that point, I said if I was ever in position to give back, I would. And number one, I went back to school, Eastern Michigan University, graduated from college, and then from there, hopefully one of those 32 teams would draft me, and I was able to put myself in a position. I got drafted by Detroit in 1998, and then 1999 is when I started my foundation, and it was an opportunity to do some things in Detroit. But then when I got to Pittsburgh in 2002, it was a way for me to now redirect my foundation goals and actually now be able to take programming to the next level. And we were able to do that, and it was something for me being home, being able to be hands-on. It allowed me to be able to do so. But I have a great team that allows us allowed us to be able to grow to the levels that we're at. And if anybody wants to follow what we do, they actually can go to batchfoundation.org.
Have you how much of an impact and changes have you seen since you started the foundation, especially in the Pittsburgh area? You grew up there, you know the area very well. Have you seen changes in the educational system and with students being more focused on sports, using that as an outlet rather than, like you said, gang violence, things like that?
Right, and I take the sports approach, and maybe, other people do other things, but the way for me, sports allowed me to stay off the streets, and because it kept me in team environments, and it kept me in the organized structure. So that's kind of the way that we do it, and what we've done was use sports as the draw, but then at that point we're able to implement any educational component that we choose. So some of the things that we see differently, number one, you see the crime rate going down, and you see the grades going up, and I think that's a direct benefit of what we are doing with the foundation. So we see the benefits, and when you see kids coming in and growing into the program, when kids who are starting, at very young ages and going all the way through high school, even to the college level, it excites us because we know we have our small impact in helping them develop as a person, and we make sure that we try to continue them throughout their life.
Could you just go into now a little detail about the trust program and what you do there? We see a lot of problems now with players out of the league, concussions, those types of issues. How have you been making changes for these players that have recently retired and help them start a new career after football?
Right, and I'm the senior captain for the trust. There's a team of 4 underneath me, and we do that. And I was actually a team that's down in D.C., and their program managers, executive director, Bahati Van Pelt, he does a tremendous job of putting things together and putting players in position to want to take advantage of what programs are out there. So when you talk about transition away from the game, a lot of people don't know what that means because they're so excited about the season. When the season doesn't happen, there's a NFL combine, then there's a draft. Well, guess what? When those players are coming in April, there's a wave of players that get cut in August. But people forget about the players who are cut, and some people they have the benefits of getting back onto another team. Some that may be the final play that they've ever played in their career. So when you look at what that looks like for players, it can be different because you can have a younger player or you can have a veteran player that could be 10 years in the league, and then now all of a sudden he's transitioned for life after. So so when it comes down to it, when you talk about somebody just going back, getting their degree, wanting to advance their degree into a master's program, somebody who wants to go to trade school, somebody just wants to start their own business, we have all of that available. And the one thing for sure is making sure that players have something or some place that they can go when you talk about brain and body, whether that's concussion, whether that's just joint ailments, arthritis, whatever that is. We want to make sure that we're helping the players to make sure that they're taking advantage, to make sure that they're able to sustain moving forward with life, to let them know that there is a team that's willing to help them and that's there to help them, and that's something that they've earned through their services in the league.
Now, you're touching on how different players may have to end their career earlier. Everybody has a different path in life. Your career definitely had a longevity to it. What do you think contributed to that?
Well, let me go back to the one point on the Players Trust program. So if any players that are listening and people want to take advantage of it, they can go to playerstrust.com and they can get more information on that particular trust program that we were just talking about. As it relates to myself and with the things that I was doing going back, I mean, for me, I knew Pittsburgh was going to be home for me, and I didn't know how long it was going to be. And I was fortunate enough to be 11 years in Pittsburgh, 15 years total in the National Football League. So for me, it was important to network and make sure that I made those connections in Pittsburgh to be able to make sure I was able to transition a lot smoother maybe than what somebody was, because I already knew what the plan was when I was done, and I was able to do that. And when you're fortunate, for me to be home and be hands-on in a lot of different programs, it was important for me to help to be able to do that. And not only am I doing that with my foundation, I'm involved with the media here locally, TV and radio. I'm dealing with the Steelers radio network. So I still stay close to the game. I'm still very close to the players because where I'm from, home, like where Mom's house is, that was 10 minutes from our practice facility. So that's how close I was to literally being home. So I stop past the facility. I see the guys because I still have relationships with everyone that is here. So it's just great to be around, and I've been blessed to really be able to do so for 15 plus years.
Now, you had a great college career at Eastern Michigan, and then you went on and were drafted by the Lions. What was that process like, going to college, getting your education, and then going into the NFL? How much of a change was that for you?
Oh, I mean, it was a big change, but it wasn't a drastic change. And I say that because where I was at Eastern Michigan, it was in Ypsilanti, Michigan, but where the Detroit Lions practiced at or played at was in Pontiac. So that was really 40 minutes up the road. So it wasn't a big change for me because I did change jobs, but at the same time, I still was able to have the friends that I went to college with because I was so close, and it was important. So for me, I really only know two areas, and that's the Detroit area and the Pittsburgh area. And, a lot of people don't get a chance to do that because they're bouncing around from team to team. They're not really unsure as far as where they want to be at. But I was blessed to be able to really be around those guys. And when I got to Detroit, they welcomed me with open arms. We had a great group of veteran guys who welcomed me and didn't feel like I was a young guy. And whatever I needed, the organization was able to apply that because I was playing at such an early age.
Yeah, and when you got to Detroit, you actually had the opportunity to play with Barry Sanders at the end of his career. What was his demeanor like, even though it was the end of his career? How was he different than every other NFL player?
Yeah, well, I think he was as humble as any person I'd ever come around. And I say that because when you're watching things, see what he does on Sunday, he didn't necessarily do that in practice all the time. You didn't see all the jukes and everything. He was just, making sure he understood his reads and the understanding of what that play was designed for. But when you got to the games, you're just like, wow, this dude is out here making these unbelievable cuts, and it made you look forward to watching film on the next day. But when you get there and watch him, he just kind of like, oh, okay, he wasn't like, oh, watch this play, look what I did to this guy. He was never that person. And he would just kind of watch it and kind of look back. When we had a chance to talk to him, you were just like, wow, this is probably one of the most humble people that I've ever been around. And I was fortunate enough to not only be here with him for 1 year, which I was hoping that it would be for 3, maybe 5 years, because I knew he could play a lot longer. But then to be able to go from Barry Sanders to Jerome Bettis, I mean, I'm just like, wow. Here I was sitting in my locker room next to these guys, and I'm just like, wow, I got 2 of the top 5 backs in the history of the National Football League that I was able to hand the ball off to. And I'm like, man, many people don't get a chance to do that, but I was, and both of those two were as humble as can be.
Now, what was your experience like living in the Detroit area, playing with the Lions, before you went back to Pittsburgh?
Well, when I got to school up there, that was the East. Like I said, Ypsilanti was right there. It was only 4 hours away from Pittsburgh, so I was still able to drive back and forth. So I was far enough away that I got the college experience, but at the same time, I was close enough to get home if I needed to be. So just being in that Detroit area, I mean, it was really cool because I went up there when I was 17. I left when I was 27. So I basically grew up in the Detroit area, and I consider that my second home. I was up there so long, people thought I was from Detroit. So when I got to Pittsburgh, people were like, "Hey, when you coming back home?" And I'm like, "I am home." They're like, "No, Detroit." I'm like, "Dude, you didn't realize I was from Pittsburgh?" They're like, "No, I had no idea." I'm like, "Yeah." So I still have friends in both places. I get out here quite often.
Now, like all NFL teams, it's business, and you eventually went back to Pittsburgh and went to the Steelers. How excited were you to go basically home and go play for your home team and have your family come watch?
Oh, it was exciting because I was a fan all the way through, and I'm still a fan now. So back in 1998 when I was getting drafted, I remember that Pittsburgh wasn't looking for a quarterback at that particular time. But when we were in Indianapolis, I made it a point at the combine to go into the Steelers suite, introduce myself to the Rooney family, introduce myself to Coach Cowher because I said, hey, I'm a fan. I just wanted to say hello. And they knew me. And they're like, oh, yeah, we know you right from Homestead. I'm like, oh, wow, these guys knew me. So I kind of had a big smile on my face, and I remember telling Coach Cowher at that point, if I ever had an opportunity to play for you, I will. And lo and behold, that happened 4 years later. And when I got to Pittsburgh on my visit, he asked me that same question. He said, Charlie, why do you want to play for Pittsburgh? I said, Coach, you remember that conversation I had with you in 1998? And he just smiled. And I said, here's my opportunity to play for you. Now that I have the opportunity, hopefully you welcome me with open arms. And he said, absolutely. And we both smiled, we shook hands, and the deal was signed.
Was your role different with Pittsburgh rather than Detroit? Did they ask you to do different style of the quarterback?
Well, it was different because when I got to Pittsburgh, they already had their starter. Cordell Stewart was the starter when I got here, so I understood my role coming in, and that was going to be the backup. You're going to compete for everything else that's earned behind Cordell. So I knew that coming into training camp so late, I wasn't able to compete as much. So in 2003, when I did have the opportunity, I was the backup, and then you just kind of let everything else unfold. Unfortunately for me, I didn't get many starting opportunities because Ben Roethlisberger was drafted in 2004. I became the backup, and then from there, I would play sporadically throughout the course of my 11 years. And since that time, I've only started 9 games, and I think I got in maybe 12 or 13 games. So it's completely different because I went from starter role to backup role, but I still had to prepare as if I was a starter.
Yeah, can you go more in depth a little bit about the role of a backup, and do you have to prepare the same exact way as a starting quarterback would?
Yeah, you absolutely do, because you get the game plans on Wednesday, so you have to know the game plan inside and out, and I prided myself in knowing the game plan better than what the starter would, because in that case, Ben was so young, and I was trying to help him along the way, and when he had questions, I needed to be able to have the answers for him. So we had to build that trust inside the meeting room, on the practice field, and even during the games, because in games he would come up and he would say, "Hey, what did you see here?" And he said, "I have something to the right." I said, "Next time you get this particular formation, this particular play, look to the left, because the left gives you a better look." And when that play worked, he just kind of nodded like, "Hey, I appreciate that." But that was something that I appreciated when I was in Detroit, because Frank Wright was a longtime Buffalo Bills backup quarterback to Jim Kelly. He was my backup my rookie year in Detroit, and he taught me that. And he said, "Listen, this is kind of some of the things that you ever would do." And I said, "Hey, if I was ever in the backup role, that's how I would be to be able to help the starter." And I prided myself on that. But in addition to knowing the game plan, you have to you don't get the only difference is as you prepare mentally for the game plan, you don't get any physical reps during the course of a week. So all you're doing is standing there and you're watching the starter take the reps. But then on the flip side, you got to play the other team's quarterback as a scout team quarterback and give them complete different looks on what that defense may see that week. But guess what? You don't get any reps, but if something was to happen to the starter, it's 3rd and 13 with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. No one cares whether or not you got any practice time during the course of the week, or whether or not you stood for the last 2.5 hours. They expect you to go in and deliver, and you got to go out there and make a play. And I was able to do that throughout the course of my career, and that's why I was able to last so long.
Yeah, going off that, you were very successful as a backup coming in the games when injuries happen. This season, and especially in other seasons, we don't see that success as often with backup quarterbacks coming in the games. What did you have a different demeanor when you went in for an injury, or did you have a different style that you wanted to play as?
Well, the thing that was different for me was I played at a very young age. So I started in Detroit for 4 years. So when you're a starter, you know how to prepare, and you know how to prepare each and every week. But most of the guys who are backups, they never really played much. Those are younger guys with inexperience. So when you have that was the advantage that I was able to use, whether or not they were trying to bring a young guy to take my job, or the coaches, they just felt comfortable enough to say, "Hey, Charlie doesn't need to rest because he can come in and play it." But either way, I knew I had to know the game plan. So when you talk about and look at other different quarterbacks around the league, you're right. People do struggle when they come in and have to play because they don't have that experience. The thing that I said, I prided myself on that. So the fact is, I never wanted, if something was to happen to Ben and I walked in, guess what? The nature of the backup quarterback, here's the media headlines. If the team doesn't win, it's because your starter went down. But if the team does win, guess what? The team stepped up when their starter was out. Those are the headlines. So you got to understand it. So I never wanted to let the team down and let them know, hey, I'm going to keep the train's not going to continue to move because the starter's not there. Hey, you have nothing to worry about. I'm going to do my job. Let's go out here and win.
All right, Charlie, as we wrap up here, could you just please again give us the link to your charity and as well as the Players Trust Foundation?
Absolutely. Let me give you 3 links. The first one's to my foundation webpage, which is batchfoundation.org. That's you get all the information that you with my foundation and what we do throughout the calendar year. The second one is playerstrust.com, and that's the Players Trust transitional program for players that transition away from a game. And then the third website is charliebatcher.com, and you can see everything that I do throughout the calendar year. So it's just really cool to be able to have all of those sites.
Charlie, we thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate learning about your charity and what you've been doing since retirement.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on. I look forward to coming on again.
All right. Thank you, Charlie.
No problem. Thank you.
This concludes our podcast of Sports and Rants with Brett and Pants. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Twitter at Sports and Rants. Like us on Facebook. Remember to subscribe to us on iTunes. And visit our website, www.sportsandrants.blogspot.com. It would help our rankings on iTunes if you rate and review our podcast. Thanks, and have a good day.